This program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sunrise Safari. Hope you're all happy and on board. And that is a comedian trying very desperately to get out of shot. But it bodes well for the rest of the drive, right? My name is Trishala with Darby on camera, and we are very excited today. Yes, we are. We are obviously more excited than this comedian is, because this comedian has decided that he's going to use this time to slink away from us. Maybe we'll get one last glance. Oh, comedian on the move. How'd they ever get to see that? Very nice. So, guys, if you have any questions about this guy there, you can see a little bit of the tail, or anything else out here, please use the hashtag WildEarth or the YouTube chat stream or Twitch. And we would love to hear from you. This bodes very well for this morning. Kind of a cool morning, 18 degrees Celsius, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Still though, yes, thank you, Darby. He says not much of a view. It's because the comedian has decided that it is not happy with us. Oh well, I'm not the only one out. James is too, so let's go over to him to say good morning.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this end of the Sunrise Safari. We've got a male hyena there, and he's just got up. And I don't know if he's heading towards perhaps a piece of meat. My name is James Henry. On camera today is Owen. I have my blankie over my leggies for the first part of the morning. For 18 degrees, it is very freezing indeed. There's an Impala running away from him. I think he's actually heading straight towards the den. There he is. It's quite odd finding him just lying on the ground out here, and I wondered if perhaps there wasn't a kill in the tree. Please talk to us, remember, using the hashtag WildEarth on Twitter. Otherwise, you can use the chat stream on YouTube or on Twitch. You can go a little bit further with him. If he goes into the little riverbed here, we won't be able to follow. The den's actually down that away. He's now heading that away. I wonder if he hasn't smelled something. And just like that, he's disappeared into the grass, which is of course very long and very easy to hide in. I think we'll probably fossick about here for a few minutes. There he is. Hang on. Just passing down through there. Okay, while I try and catch up with him, let's go up to andBeyond Ngala, where Nicky is about to make his world premiere debut.
Good morning, everyone. You're at andBeyond Ngala at the moment. So it's a very beautiful morning, quite nice and fresh out there. It's been chilly. You can see we put our jackets on. So in the back, we have Marcel, who's going to be on the camera with us. And this morning, we're hoping to go look for that Birmingham Pride, or the Pride with the white lines. Now, before I show you out a little bit about where we're going to be driving this morning, I just wanted to quickly take a map of the area just to show you or familiarize you where we are at the moment. So if you look, you'll see that we are probably going to be around this section right over here. Now, last night with Sean, we found that big male line that was not too far away from here, was more in this direction behind us. So in other words, like a little bit more to this side. And yesterday morning, we were tracking the pride with the white lines right over here. So during the evening, this big male started calling, and the rest of the pride might have responded to him, and he might be on his way. Now, the good news is if you look right over here, you'll notice there's some lion tracks on the ground. So there's a few up over here, and then some lion dung right over here, and then the tracks of this male heading down in this direction. So it's exciting news. As we're going out to look for this pride, we might even find one of the big males joined up during the evening. So on that note, let's start driving and see if we can get them. And I'm excited to meet everyone. This is my first time, so hopefully we don't do too badly this morning. But as I said, exciting. There are some lion tracks on the road. They are heading in this direction. So this time of the year with the tall grass, it's pretty difficult to see lions, especially if they are laying down. However, as we're driving along, we're going to try and see if we can maybe see that white on the belly, like with a big male like we're following this morning, maybe even that mane standing out. It's not warm, so they might be in an open area or possibly laying near the road. So as we go along, we'll look out for those features. Sometimes there could be flies around them, so they might flick their tail, any form of movement. And as well as some of the other animals like zebra or wildebeest or even Impala, if they spot these lions, they'll often go with a little snort like pfft, and then we know there could be something in that area. So while we are going to be looking out for the lions, we're going to work with some of the other rangers to try and see if there's any other tracks that might be a little bit more in this direction from where we are now. Let's head back to James and see if he's still with that hyena.
No, we don't have our hyena, I'm afraid. He headed into that little riverbed, and so we are going to go down towards the den site and see if we can find a ribbon. For those of you who perhaps haven't met Ribbon, I'm sure most of you have by now, Ribbon is matriarch of the Djuma clan. She's got 2 little cubs. We've only seen them once. I think they were probably about a week old when we did see them, and we haven't seen them again since, so we keep sort of staking out the den each day and seeing if we can find them. There was also a male leopard in this area yesterday, and perhaps we'll luck out with him too. Yeah, Sky, he was a fat hyena. He'd definitely eaten something very recently. The whole clan has looked enormously well fed in the last little while, and I'm sure they have found, well, I think 2 or 3 days ago they definitely spent the night stealing something or hunting something because they were all very fat. And then last night again, I think that chap had something to eat. So quite possibly there are leopards knocking about who are having their kills lifted from them by the pillaging ways of the Djuma clan. Or perhaps they're doing some hunting of their own. A number of you are commenting on how clean this vehicle looks. This is the Mahindra. Well, yes, it was cleaned yesterday, very kindly by Kenneth. Yes, I'm amazed that you noticed that. Well done. For those of you who are new viewers, this is not our usual vehicle. This Mahindra is very much a temporary solution to a Land Rover problem that we have. Well, I mean, if you've got a Land Rover, you've got a problem. But our particular Land Rovers require the almost permanent ministrations of our mechanic, or the Djuma mechanic, who is currently, of course, holed up at home due to the lockdown. And it took precisely 2 days of his absence for 2 of the vehicles to die on us, and so that necessitated our movement to this large boat-like contraption known as the Mahindra. And so yes, that's why we're on it. You'll notice we have 1 Land Rover left, and now we're on this Mahindra, which is reliable. I will give it that. It does make some very disturbing squeaking sounds from the back, and it rocks over the bumps like a boat, and driving it off-road is not easy. But it's going forward and there is a camera attached to it, and so we shall tolerate it. Nikki has managed to find one of the animals that used to migrate, believe it or not, between here and Ngala.
So we just found this wildebeest all by itself. I just wanted to quickly take my binoculars and have a quick look. Now, just judging by his size, like he is moving away from us, but just judging by his size, he's probably one of the more dominant males that you'll find in this area. And often you'll probably ask the question, like, why is he all by himself? And I can imagine, even with a big herd, sometimes there will be some dominant, like a dominant bull, so he'll push out all the younger bulls, and he was probably pushed out. Have a quick look. Look what he's doing now. Do you see how he's taking his feet and he's actually dragging it through the soil? And I don't know, like, if we'll be able to get quite close. If you'll even notice, like, on his face, you'll see these different shades of colors. And one of them, I've noticed, there's quite a bit of mud on the front of his boss or on the front of his face. So what he might be doing is he's marking his territory. So between his hooves, there are these little glands that as he's rubbing it through the soil, it puts his scent on the ground, as well as when he rubs his face through the soil. So this is definitely probably a dominant bull of this area. And what he's trying to do is he's marking his territory so that if there's any other females that come into this area, that he can then form a herd with them. But mainly for now, he's just marking his territory. It's still early part of the morning. He's also pretty relaxed. The lion tracks we had were heading up in this direction, and if they were fresh from this morning, he'd probably be a bit more on edge, either by seeing the lion or maybe hearing it. But because he's so relaxed, let's carry on with our drive. Luna Chick, you were asking a question of how big can a male lion grow? Well, a big male lion can grow up to 240 kilograms, so that's like nearly 500 pounds. But the biggest one I've seen, like if I can use an illustration, the head will probably be like that size, so nearly the size of my steering wheel. Like, that's how big the head would be of this lion. And probably just over a meter tall as well, like from the pad all the way up to the top of the shoulder. Now, this male lion we are trying to track this morning, we don't see any tracks anymore on the road, so we're thinking that he might have gone off more in this direction. Now, whenever we're tracking animals, it's like building a puzzle. So first we have to start with the outline, and then from there on, we'll start focusing and building towards the middle of the puzzle. So in other words, first we'll go at the outskirts, see if there's any tracks of the lion crossing over any of these dirt roads. And if we don't see anything from there, we know that the lion would probably have moved into an area where there's no roads, and then from there, hopefully, with the help of some of the other rangers, or even maybe going off on foot, and see if we can find them from there. But while we are on our search, let's link back to James, who's currently at the hyena den.
We have made it to the hyena den, where there are two hyenas. Ribbon, the matriarch, who's quite possibly nursing her babies down there as we speak, looking at them, not showing them to us. And then we've got a youngster further up, and I don't know who that is. Our more regular viewers will be able to identify him almost certainly, or her, She's looking quite hopeful because she's not just lying there. Come on, bring them out. All of us, of course, hoping that she's finally going to bring her cubs out to see us. Come on, Ribbon. You know you want to. She's definitely looking at them. Yeah. Sharanya Ribbon is indeed quite deep in that hole. And this is why we're not seeing the cubs, because the hole is so deep that she doesn't need them to come out to suckle. She just sticks her back end into the hole and they suckle there. So until they get to the age where they're going to play a little bit outside, they're going to be hidden from us. Oh, wonderful. Trishala's managed to find, a giraffe.
Yes, it is some giraffe. Now, we're right on the northern boundary, and you are looking at Sydney's Dam with some Impala in the beautiful morning light, as well as some giraffe. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very nice. When we stopped here, there was just one, and then all of a sudden the other 3 just walked in, which was lovely. I really like seeing animals from the distance because it's, I don't know, something about them not realizing that you're here. Obviously with the vehicle they're very comfortable as well, but there's just something about them completely unaware that you're there and doing their own thing. And with giraffe, that's difficult when we have the vehicle because you know their first line of defense is to stare at you. So you don't get to watch that too much. It's nice to watch some giraffe just going about their business without noticing us. And at that height, it's difficult to not notice things. So this is a good distance away to just watch them go about their giraffe business. So obviously for those new viewers, this is as far north as we can go. So we're looking into another section of the park. I think it's really beautiful. All the grass is a really nice height. Looks like somebody's been combing them. And then we have some Impala in the grass too. Kelly, you say you've been waiting to see giraffes in the stream? Well, here you go, Kelly. Not 1, not 2, not 3. A special for you, quarantine special for you, 4 giraffe. I'm really glad to see them too, Kelly. I do really, really enjoy them. In fact, yesterday we saw the big bull that we normally get near quarantine. We saw it sitting down and he was just lovely. They're very, very interesting to watch. MGN, you say it's a family journey. Yes, it is, especially when they come into Djuma, it'll be a long family journey. He says that, everyone, because a group of giraffe is sometimes called a journey. Journey of Giraffe. I think it's a cool name, and that's because of the way that they can travel quite a bit, and they have a fission-fusion society. They don't normally hang out together all the time. They move together in different groups. Hence, they are a journey. Shelby, you're wondering if they even are called a herd. They have a very, very loose social structure. So usually it'll be females with little ones, as it usually is with any type of hooved animal, really. And you can call them a herd. There's nothing wrong with that. But you know, there's those fancy little collective nouns for them too, like a journey. And they tend to come together and separate and come together and separate. And there's not really any rules when it comes to giraffe. Very cool. So I've been doing some reading on animals swimming. And I came across something very interesting. That is that all mammals have the ability to swim, except for apes and humans, who need to be taught how to swim. And that's interesting because it means giraffe can swim. Maybe that's badly phrased. Giraffe have the potential to swim. They haven't been caught swimming, at least as far as I know. And at that height, oh, did you see that? It stepped, and then it did sometimes what you get when you step funny and your knee clicks backwards. So because of the position of their head and the weight of their front half, if they do get into the water that's deep enough for them to float, so I believe it's going to be at least 9 meters deep, the water, because for a giraffe you're looking at about a maximum of 6 meters, then it tends to bob forward. So it'll have a difficult time keeping its nostrils out of the water. But put it in 9 meters of water and you still got a floating giraffe. And why that is in general with mammals, is that mammals tend to doggy paddle, as you would have seen with your puppies at home. And that's because it's literally a mimic of the motion that they normally do on the ground. So they continue to move in that same motion in the water, and it's good enough for them. Now, an exception here, of course, would be hippos, because of their density of their bones and all of that. They can just kind of walk. Anyway, we're going to move on from these lovely giraffe and send you back over to James at the den.
Well, again, that seems to be the general form here at the den. You've come back, Pretty's asleep, backside inside the den, asphyxiating her cubs with evil-smelling gas, and we're none the wiser as to how they're doing. I did hear a little squeak from one of them, so they're definitely down there, but whether she'll be kind enough to show them to us, I'm not sure. We're not going to spend all morning here, but we'll spend, I don't know, about half an hour or so looking and waiting, because I think she's feeding them, and often post-feed is when they would play. Oh. And Louise just telling me that I don't want to spend the whole morning here. Thank you, Louise. And there was a leopard in the area yesterday, so we'll see if we can find some sign of him. Although from the sounds of things, it was quite possibly Molwati, who was a nervous fellow around vehicles, generally. Pretty, we will go as soon as you show us your babies. Ribbon, sorry. Thank you for that, Owen, reminding me. No, hyenas wag their tails when they want to get rid of flies. They don't wag their tails when they're happy. They stick their tails out when they're in a heightened emotional state, so when they're greeting each other or when they're trying to show dominance. Tail wagging as a sign of happiness is unique to domestic dogs and has evolved as a result of the relationship that domestic dogs have with human beings. They do it a little bit with each other, domestic dogs, but it's mainly when they are with humans. And interestingly, the reaction of clamping the tail down putting your tail between your legs, is a way of stopping the escape of pheromones that would indicate fear. And I suspect that hyenas might do that same sort of thing. So not even wild wolves will wag their tails at each other to show happiness. Oh, Trishala's got an interesting bird for us.
I do have an interesting bird for us. It's interesting because it is an African green pigeon. And whenever we think of pigeons, we think of the ones that eat our scraps out at the beachfront or in the cities. But these guys are just gorgeous, and they are more after berries. Look at that. Now it's sitting on top of a magic quarry. And you can see those round berries. Fruits. Oh, yes. And just tucking in. Nice green pigeon. Having an awesome breakfast. Now you can see that very distinct, obviously you can see the color is very distinct and still looks like a pigeon. And also the yellow kind of leg warmers that it's wearing. The feathers on the legs. It is very, very easy to identify. And also a really nice, not spin, but a different perspective on a pigeon. I think that we often just think of them as pest-like birds. But in fact, they're quite curious and really, really gorgeous. I love the yellow on the legs very much. So they almost entirely eat fruit. They enjoyed very much. Not after chips and bread, these ones. It's been playing hide and seek with us. Hi, Dacian, you say this is the first time you've seen one of these? I'm so glad that I could bring it to you. They're very cool. I haven't seen one in a while. And what's extra special is we get to see it feeding as well. Very nice. Beautiful. Oh, you can hardly see it there with the green color on the tree. It really is beautiful, and I think it's underrated. No, I was born in Durban. Now you do.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure what's going on. I must confess that I find the incidence of technical difficulties when there is a little bit of cloud and a bit of rain seems to go up, but nobody can explain to me why this should be the case. Certainly the power generating utility in the area, aka Eskom, seems to struggle greatly as soon as even the smallest cumulus floats gently overhead. But let's face it, that's not the only thing they struggle with, is it? No further updates from here. Like I say, we'll spend half an hour waiting here and then we'll press on. I think a slightly warmer morning might inspire them out. No, we have only seen the cubs once pattern, and that is because they are so young. I don't think it's got anything to do with Ribbon not wanting to have visitors around. If she didn't want visitors around, she wouldn't sleep like she does while we're here. She would also, if she felt threatened, leave. This is what hyenas do at the den, and it's something that is almost incongruous. As soon as a threat comes to the den, the adults will scarper and the babies will go inside. And the adults do this safe in the knowledge that their youngsters have secluded spaces in the dens that no big predator can get to. And then if the den is sufficiently harassed by other predators, they will eventually abandon it and abandon the cubs. I haven't seen that happen here. But if lions continually come and investigate a den like this, they'll eventually just abandon it and leave the cubs to their own fate. But she's not vaguely threatened by us. She knows us well. She's grown up around vehicles. She's stolen our flip-flops and our shoes. So we shall sit here as the wind blows the Chloris roxburgiana on the top of the mound. And while we do that, you're going to go up to andBeyond Ngala, where Nikki is still on the search for the Birmingham Pride.
We're back at andBeyond Ngala. So we found some more tracks of this male lion, and it looks to me that he was heading into this area. So we're very close to where we last had the tracks of where the lions were mainly moving around yesterday morning and the day before. And it does look like this male is heading in that area. Now, yeah, we probably, I would say maybe close to 9-10 hours, but unfortunately we didn't find the rest of the pride. Now, what I'm thinking is maybe the pride has moved further away from some of these roads that we're driving, and they might have made a kill somewhere, or maybe even have gone and laid down. We just don't know. Of course, they're going to be very opportunistic. Any opportunity they can get. And even when they move, they might even start moving into the wind. Now, the wind is blowing from our right to left. And so most likely if lions are going to move, they're going to move into the wind. It's easier if there's any prey that they might be looking out for, they can smell it. But as well as it gives them that element of surprise. So, Karen, you've asked a question about a little bit about myself. So, I grew up in the central part of South Africa on a beautiful farm in the middle of the heart of the Free State. And then, once I finished school, I started doing nature conservation and game farm management. Because since I was a young boy, my parents used to take us to these national parks and used to have like a little bird book and a little journal just to write down all the animals we see as we go along the way. And eventually from there on, started with the nature conservation diploma, and then after 2-3 years, I joined up with the andBeyond guiding team. And then from there on, I started at another reserve called andBeyond Private Game Reserve. Beautiful, probably one of the most diverse private game reserves in the world. And so I was guiding there for quite a few years, and then from there on decided to take a little gap, went across to Australia for a little while to do a Masters of Business Administration, MBA. And then after that, I just had such a big longing to come back to the bush, and I came back, and here we are back at andBeyond Ngala. James, I do enjoy looking at the smaller things, especially like insects. And before we carry on, there's one now. Not an insect, but actually a beautiful bird. Let me stop right over here. You'll be able to see. Now, if you James, if you look at the color, have you noticed like the very iridescent blue color? And also, like, I think with the light, it does look a bit dark at the moment. And a bit of black around the face. It's called a Birchall starling. Now, talking about insects earlier and spiders, so sometimes when bigger animals like buffalo or even elephants move through an area, you often find that the insects are flushed up, and these Birchall starlings will actually go along those bigger animals and try and catch those little insects that might fly up. But yeah, very interesting bird to see. And James, just on that question, I mean, like with the smaller things, oh, there we go, you can hear it calling. But with the smaller things as well, sometimes when you just sit down like this and you just listen to everything that's going on around you, you're able to pick up so much. I mean, even with birds, whenever you drive, and let's say now we are looking out for these lions, you might find that the birds start flying up and they might make this alarm call telling us, okay, there's something, either a lion, either a leopard, maybe wild dogs that could be in the area. And so by using these little things, it might give us an indication of where some of the bigger things might be. And always how I love to look at it is look at the environment as a whole, because every single thing is linked together. As they said, the whole circle of life. Let's carry on with our search. There's actually some, as we're driving along, there's some tracks of zebra on the road. Oh. There's some Impala here. Let's carry on with our search, but let's head across to Trishala. I think she might have one of our other special birds, a kingfisher. And let's have a look.
It is, Nikki. It is a woodland kingfisher. Looking very, very gorgeous in this dip. So this is the exact same dip we had wild dogs in not too long ago. The big pack that we got to spend some time with. And it's a really nice dip. It's just to the east of Gari Cutline. It's one of my favorite dips because you can never actually get into it. So when I stop and I see something, even just kind of in it, I like it. So you can see there, as Darby showed you, nice and bushy all around, and that green is just lovely. And this color of this guy's feathers is just striking. Often called Halcyon blue because of that exact color. And that is also its genus name, Halcyon senegalensis. American woman, you say you like this one. It's beautiful. It really is. It's a bit tired, a bit sleepy, still waking up. Can't expect everyone to be up at the same time we are. But I think that apart from waking up, oh bless you, Darby, is that it's keeping an eye on any special insects or other invertebrates on the ground that it might get a tasty morsel from. Chris, you'd like to know, where's that big beak for? What is that big beak for, woodland kingfisher? Why do you have such a big beak? Well, Chris, it says it's because I eat so many different things, but mostly insects. They like grasshoppers quite a bit. They also take some small animals, like small reptiles and things like that. And if you imagine that you're taking an insect or a small reptile, you want quite a distance between yourself or your eyes, your sensitive bits, and the tip with which you grab them with. So that's why they need a strong but long beak. If it were just purely small insects they were taking, they would have a slightly thinner beak. But because they're taking quite big guys, as well as, like I said, small reptiles, worms and things like that, they're going to need a slightly sturdier beak. The color of those feathers just get me every single time. Look at it, eyeing out potential meals. Ooh. I thought I saw a grasshopper land there, but it was not. It was just a piece of fluff. Okay, we're going to get out of this dip, and while we do that, we're going to lose a bit of signal, so I'm going to send you back over to James.
Yes, we're still here, waiting for Ribbon to do. He has studiously refused to do thus far. She is now sleeping again. She's got 10 minutes before we press on from here and see what else we can find. Perhaps returning a little bit later. There have been some cub noises coming from underneath there. A little bit of and and then silence again. And only the Cape turtle dove overhead exhorting us to work harder, work harder, work harder. Which in a time of COVID-19 is not easy, as we all know. There's another noise. There's quite a lot of noise now coming out of it. You won't be able to hear it. Hello, Geordie. You're 9 years old and you want to know how tall they are. Well, from the foot to the shoulder, they stand about a metre off the ground. Ooh, what's going on here? Here we go. There we are. I saw the head of one. I'm sure she just licked the head of one of her cubs. Oh. That was close, everyone. It was close. May have added another 10 minutes to our stay here. I'm sure. Did you see that, huh? Yeah, she has got very far in. There's more grunting and wheezing from the youngsters. Come on, chaps, stick your head out over the top there. We're ready, Ribbon. There, she's cleaning one of them. I'm sure she's cleaning one of them. That's it, stick your head out. Come on. Come and have a look. Oh, I've got a good feeling. It might be misplaced, but I still have it. Carla, when they're born, hyena cubs are probably about the same size as lion cubs, which is remarkable when you consider how much smaller they are as adults. But they're much more precocial than lion cubs when they're born. Oh, that was closer. I thought, They may even be slightly bigger than lion cubs. I'll try and look that up for you while we wait here. I was just rather sure that we were about to get a view of the little ones. We still might be. Come on, bring them out, my girl. Shelby, normally it's 1 or 2 babies. There are records of 3 babies at a time, but it's normally just 1 or 2. Oh man, I thought we were in for it there. Dash and damn it. Find your size here. Yeah, I'll try and find the size of the cubs exactly for you. In the meantime, let us go up to andBeyond Ngala, where Nikki is driving along one of the most beautiful rivers in the lowveld.
So Rowan and Sean and another ranger called Yapi, they currently on the bank of the river where we're driving in now. So this is the Timbavati River, and the last tracks they had were coming more or less in this direction. So we're slowly driving up the river to see if there's maybe any other tracks that might have come in, or even with it being quite a cold morning, there's also a bit of a breeze blowing, so these lions might just move into the riverbed to get a bit of refuge out of this wind. But we're going to carry on. Hopefully we get rewarded with these lions. But also, even though we are looking out for lions, this is also a nice opportunity to look out for leopard as well, because often they prefer these denser areas, nice cover for them, especially if they need to hunt. And also quite a few big trees if they do make a kill, just to hoist the kill up into the tree to get it away from the hyenas. Since we currently at andBeyond Ngala, it is situated probably, you know what would be the best is, let me quickly just draw out a map just to show you where we are. It'd be really quick. Now, if you look at South Africa right over here, you'll see that we are right up on this section here, so the northeastern part, in the Greater Kruger National Park. So from the Greater Kruger National Park, halfway in the middle, more on the eastern side, we are right over there. So if I would focus that in, so this is just our care for the land, care of the wildlife, and care of the people, and it's all made possible with the guests. But just to get back, so this is the Greater Kruger National Park right over here, and we're actually part of that, and this is our section that we are traversing, or where we're able to drive at the moment. Now currently, we're probably where this red spot is, right over here in the river. That's just to show you more or less where we are at the moment. Now the last time I saw these lions was 2 days ago, and since then we haven't really been able to see any clear direction of where they might be going, or if they might have caught something, because the last time we saw them, I think with Rowan, they only made a kill on something small. And you can imagine, with a pride of nearly 15 lions, how often they would need to hunt in order to sustain them. So we don't know. There's always that bit of excitement to it. So as I said, I'm hoping that we hear about the guys and if there's more tracks coming in this way. So David, you were asking a question, where are the other trackers? Are they currently in a vehicle or off on foot? So if there's any tracks on the road, so you know these dirt roads that we're driving at the moment, so if the line tracks are still in the road, they'll stay in the vehicle. But once they start moving off the track into an area where there's no roads or it's really thick where you won't be able to spot the lines from the road, they'll then go off on foot to try and see if they can find the lines. So X-Ranger, you asked a question about what are the off-roading rules or procedures at Ngala. So of course we can off-road for the big five. However, we always ask the question if it would be necessary. I mean, if it's not going to increase the view of the animal, then probably not off-road. But if we need to off-road in order to follow them, then we are able to do that. So we don't have any tracks coming out yet, and the guys are still on the vehicle looking out for any further tracks or signs of these lines. For now, let's go back to James, see if those Hyena cubs have come out of the den.
No, you'd have rushed over here if the Hyena cubs had come out yet. There's still more squealing going on, so I'm going to extend her deadline by 10 minutes, and at 0700 we'll pull out of here. It would be so dreadful to miss out on seeing them. I guess in the scale of dreadful things around the world, seeing the cubs once today really wouldn't compute. So I think perhaps describing it as so dreadful was, overkill. An exaggeration. It would be a slight, very slight pity were we not to see them today. How about they don't, you know? I'm not actually sure. I've forgotten what happens to the dung or the scat in the den. I think most of it probably gets pushed out by the cubs while they're outside. But she can't get into the den to clean it out, so she doesn't go in there and sort of make their beds and clean the loo. So I think it starts to be fairly rank inside there fairly quickly. Now, you think you'll probably find that the cubs do quite a lot of the cleaning themselves, initially. If they go to the loo outside the den, I'm sure she does clean it. Asking a question about whether or not I think the hyenas would have dug this hole themselves. No, this hole was almost certainly dug by an aardvark or an ant bear. They are the ones that open up the termite mounds for just about all the animals that burrow in them. So porcupines and wild dogs and hyenas and warthogs and anything else that happens to use a termite mound for a home almost always has to use an ant bear hole or aardvark hole, because only they have the nails and strength to dig open the termite mounds. Good question there. So it's quite a soporific sitting here watching the sleeping hyena. One tends to start nodding off oneself. If Owen nods off, however, he's going to injure himself because he's had to perch him on the back of the frame of the Mahim jar. So he's either going to end up with a concussion from the frame or on his backside on the floor. So Owen, stay awake. Only I can sleep. Yeah, that's a good idea. Louise, who's in the final control this morning, suggesting that we just strap Owen to the side of the car with some bungee cables. Yeah, that's a good idea. No, no drink, no umbrella. You certainly don't need an umbrella today, Owen. The clouds are doing that for you. I must say, it's rather beastly weather-wise today. Bit like yesterday morning, the sort of non-committal weather. Clouds that give no rain. Blue sky every so often that doesn't give any comfort because it keeps getting covered up by more clouds. Nasty knifing wind. Yes, I suppose it could be worse. Louise says we're living in a city. Were we to be living in a city? Agreed. No, Gail, it's highly unlikely in hyenas that the cubs would have a different father. Normally, the hyena female will mate with only one male. It's not impossible that they should mate with a it's not impossible for lions, we don't think, to have multi-paternity in litters, and we think it might be possible in leopards as well. But in hyenas, I'm pretty sure it's not possible. All right, everyone, we're going to pack it in here. We're going to move on and perhaps come back here a little bit later. While we do that, let's go back across to Trishala.
Back over to Trishala you are. So we have followed a male leopard, well, at least his tracks, and he crossed straight out on our eastern border. I'm just going to show you quickly. Hang on. Thank you, Game Drive Radio. That was a lot of static. Alright, so our lovely male leopard, whose tracks you can see from here, we followed it from all the way down Hippo Pools Road, again here, edging ever so quickly to our boundary, which is here. And there we go. Ta-da! Boom. That's actually a really nice one. There it is. Small. Around there. And straight across. There seems to be a faintish one here, but I can hardly tell. It's just that there isn't any on either side. Which, unfortunately for us, means that he's moved straight across into Torchwood, where I can only watch from here. Actually, I mean, I can do this to have a look for tracks, but the ground is very, very, very hard here. And either way, if we can't see him from this point, then we won't be able to see him at all. So we're going to move on from our male leopard tracks. I would have loved to have found a spotty friend. That was just for you, Darby. But no. That's okay, though. I would love to maybe have a peruse of Gari Main. I'm feeling the main roads today. Ooh, a riverbed sounds like a good idea too. I'm stealing that idea from Nikki, who is driving through a riverbed at andBeyond Ngala.
So while we're driving this riverbed, I've noticed quite a few elephant tracks and as well as elephant dung in the area. And I would love to know from the viewers how many of you would say elephant is like your favorite animal. Hopefully they can let me know. But you'll often see in years like, or the time of the year, you'll often find that elephants will come into these riverbeds, and you'll see there's no, I mean, if you look at the river itself, you'll see there's no water here, but under all the sand, there's quite a bit of water. So the elephants will come and then dig in this riverbed and hopefully try and get some water. Oh, as we're talking about it, I just want to jump across. I can actually see it right over here. Let me just stop and move across. Hopefully the camera can follow. But you'll see there's quite a few elephant dung like right over here. So see these big, looks like big barrels of dung on the sand. And right over here, there's a hole. Now imagine an elephant just coming through and digging in the river to get to the water. Now, let me try and see if this would work. All right, hopefully it works. But so I didn't dig too hard. So you can imagine an elephant with that long trunk will dig a little bit deeper, try and get down. You'll even find like they'll use their feet in order to move the sand. But if you look here, look at how damp the sand is. I reckon if I had to go another maybe foot or two, we would probably have gotten to water. But that's most likely where an elephant was sitting and digging for water. Let's carry on with our line search. John, I heard elephants are your favorite animals. Now, I think my mom as well. She's also probably looking at the video as we speak, but I know from experience one of her favorite animals is definitely as well like an elephant. There was a book that was written called The Elephant Whisperer from Lawrence Anthony, and probably one of my favorite books, because I would say the one thing that really stands out with an elephant to me is often the little elephants, when they go to the water, they don't know how to use their trunk properly. So they'll walk and they'll go like, and then they'll go to the water, and then sometimes they'll hit the water with their trunk because they just don't know how to use it properly. But definitely one of my favorites. If we do see them, I'll be super excited. So from talking to the other rangers earlier on, the lines were coming down in this direction. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to go and see if we can go ahead of them and maybe do a wide loop around and see if the other tracks of the lines might be further down this side. But it does look like the line tracks are heading out of the river. Rummet, you were asking a very interesting question of when would the Timbavati River flow up, or when does it actually flow? Now, we're very lucky. Oh, sorry, I just want to take it out of four-wheel drive. There we go. So often, the beginning of this year, we actually had quite a bit of rain, and with that river, it's a seasonal river. So whenever there's a lot of rain, then the river would flow, but I would say a week or week and a half after that, it will start drying up and look like it looks like right now. So the beginning of the year, we actually saw it flowing twice, and that was the first time for most rangers. I mean, some rangers that have been here for 5 years said they've never seen that. So, I mean, we do get these special moments out there as well. Patty, there was you had a question if we ever got stuck in that river. Touch wood, I have not been stuck in that river as of yet, but I was very close. So the other day, myself and another ranger, we were driving along the riverbed, and I think at that moment the vehicle slipped out of four-wheel drive, and the under part of the vehicle actually went and it lay down on this hump of sand, so we couldn't move. And we thought maybe we was going to be stuck from there and had to get someone to come and tow us out. Because often that is what happens. Like if it's raining or let's say you are driving and you do get stuck, we'll ask some of the other rangers to bring a rope and pull us out. But this particular day, we managed to have a shovel with us and quickly dug our way out, and then we were able to drive away, but nearly got stuck. However, you have to be very careful if you don't go into low range, so and drive out of it, you might get stuck, which has happened a few times in other places to me, other than here, luckily. I think it was a build-up towards here. Let's go across to James. So James used to guide here at Ngala for quite a bit. I think it was early 2000s. I'd really like to know if he got stuck during his time here. There'll probably be some interesting stories.
I got stuck all the time at Ngala. It wasn't andBeyond Ngala back then, it was just Ngala. Well, it was the same company, but the company since changed name. Just for those of you who are perhaps a little confused why we tack andBeyond onto the front of Ngala all the time, it is because it's part of the andBeyond stable. andBeyond's a tourism, maybe Nikki's to explain this to you, but andBeyond is a tourism that has a remarkably wonderful stable of gorgeous places to visit, including andBeyond Ngala and andBeyond Pinda. I'm not sure I can remember them all. There are 4 or 5 Tanzanian properties. I think there is one Kenyan one. There might be 2 Kenyan ones. One of them in the Mara. And for those of you who have been watching a long time, you'll know that we have often spoken about andBeyond Kichwatembo. Although we've just used Kichwatembo, we haven't tacked andBeyond onto the front of it. They belong to the same stable. And there are lots of places in Botswana and Namibia as well. I think that's all. I don't think they're in Zambia. Oh yeah, of course. There are also places. They used to run places in India. I don't think they do anymore, but they've certainly got connections with places in India and in South America. Let us look at that beautiful red bush over there. The dwarf coral tree. It's not all about big animals. Oh, and there's a Kudu as well, but you won't be able to see it. Let's just walk behind the bush. This is the dwarf coral tree. The most remarkably coloured bushes out here. Anyway, I can't remember a specific story of getting stuck at andBeyond Ngala, but I did get stuck often. I can tell you, in fact, in my very first week there, it was during the floods of the year 2000, which seems like a long time ago, because it was a long time ago, of course. And in the year 2000, I began my training in, when was it? It would have been mid-March, I suppose. And there were just the most horrendous floods going on in the area. And I was sent out one night by somebody to go and fetch some people who'd got stranded on drive. Nobody knows where this instruction came from, because the head ranger certainly didn't send it out. And basically what I had to do was drive from the main lodge to a sort of temporary camp that probably still exists there. I'm not sure if it does, but it used to. We can carry on our own. And there were 3 riverbeds that I had to cross. Small riverbeds, basically like the one we've just been looking at. But they were all flowing with water, and as I came up to the 3rd one, I forget its name, I just ploughed in. I mean, I could hardly drive a Land Rover at all. I barely understood how the 4x4 system worked, the low range, etc. And I had no idea of the lay of the land. It was pitch black darkness. I didn't know how dark or how, I had no idea how deep this thing was. And so I'd gone through 2-4, so I just thought, well, this one will be fine, and nobody would have sent me out here if it was dangerous anyway. And I ploughed into it, and the vehicle... What was that? Oh, sorry, we're not going to finish the story. We're going to go across to Nicky. He's got some interesting birds.
We just saw some southern ground hornbill. I just want to have a look. It does look like they might be moving away from us. There are listening in at the moment is a guy called Stuart, and one of his main things is to try and see how many birds he can see this year. He's quite a big adamant birder, and I thought I wanted to get a southern ground hornbill for him for the year, but unfortunately, Stuart, I didn't get it. But if we do see some more, I'll definitely stop and we can have another look. But what I'm going to do, just reverse a bit and see if there's maybe if there's another quick glimpse of them. But Stuart, you're not allowed to ticket. Here we go. No, I think they might have moved off. So just an update for what's happening with those lines. Apparently the tracks have turned around and now they're heading in the opposite direction of where we were heading into. So we're going to go back into the river, and this time we're going to drive a different section and see if we can maybe see some more tracks of these lines. But it is exciting. I mean, the longer we can stay on the tracks, the more chances are we going to find these lines. So I'm still keen to hear what James has to say about getting stuck at Ngala. So back to him.
We're at Treehouse Waterhole now, just seeing what's over here. Anyway, so what happened then was that I drove into this gully, and the vehicle started flowing with the current of the water. It was flowing so strongly. And mercifully, one of the front tires found purchase, and we managed to pull out from the river. And as I got out, I thought I'm an excellent exponent of 4x4 driving. I'm really, really good at this. And I drove into a massive hole that virtually buried the front of the car. And so there I was. Ooh, there's a quite special bird there that we don't often see. And it is a waxbill. It's a common waxbill, though, which we don't often see around here. Yeah, the one that just flew. Anyway, Owen will search for that. And I drove into this hole, pouring rain, pitch black. I had a tiny little torch that had cost me the equivalent of 50 US cents, basically, that could barely see anything. And I had heard that you can jack a vehicle up and drive off the jack in order to get out of a hole. And so this is what I did. And for the next half an hour in the pouring rain and thunder and lightning and darkness, totally clueless about how to operate in an area like this, I jacked the car up and drove it off, and jacked the car up and drove it off, until eventually the car came free. And I made it to this place where these guests and guides and trackers were stuck. And the head ranger said to me, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I was told to come and fetch you." And he said, "Fetch us? The only reason we're here is because we decided we couldn't possibly cross that river you crossed to get here." And it remains a mystery to this day who sent the instruction or how it was that I fetched up where I did. That was just one of the times I got stuck there. I was superb at getting stuck. Really good. The best there's ever been. Anyway, we didn't find the common waxbill, did we? I'm not sure how many of you have seen a common waxbill here before. They're not as common as their name might suggest they are. They're a very pretty little waxbill with a little red bandit's mask. And I shall, I'm afraid, have to show you a picture of it because it flew off before we could get it on camera. Alright, keep looking in the quarry there. I can still hear them. Let's just look around there. Anyway, it took me some time to get used to living out in the bush because, of course, I was a city fellow and I had no real idea. I'm also massively impractical, and rather than learning how to saw wood and fix engines, I learned how to play the guitar. And that is a skill that's very useful around the campfire, but utterly useless when you are driving a Land Rover. Now, I think these waxbills have gone. Oh, and here's a picture of the common waxbill. He's a very pretty bird with his little red bandit's mask. You got him? We should look at the other pictures, I suppose. You see, he's very common around South Africa. That's a photograph of him. That's another photograph of him. There's another photograph of him. Yeah, there is a photograph of a number of them. Oh, there is a juvenile, which has got no nice plumage. There is its nest. It's interesting. That's a cool nest. I didn't know they nested so close to the ground. And its eggies. 25 millimeters in length. Very nice. Let's just quickly check if it hasn't flown back onto this bush. Much more exciting than looking at this unoccupied bush is Trishala's latest contribution to the drive.
It is. She is a large, thick-skinned creature. It's a wonderful elephant cow. She's so peaceful. She's just chomping along on the grass right here at the, actually very close to Chitwa. At this point, we're near the southern boundary. Oh, getting in all that grass. Wow, she's quite large. Don't you think that her belly is poking out quite a bit from at the sides? Oh, it might have just been the position because now it's... Oh! Wow. There was a low rumble. Sorry, Darby. There's a tiny one just ahead there. Hello, little one. I'm trying to push back into an another small one behind it. Doesn't work like mom, little one. When these tiny ones are feeling threatened, you'll find that they'll move underneath the belly of mom. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for others that are in the same boat of small little calf. She seems very, very relaxed, though. Dakota G, you'd like to know how many babies can an elephant have? Most commonly, they only have one. But twins have been recorded. In fact, twins have been seen here not too long ago on Djuma. Tristan had them. So it's easy to tell if there's twins because there'll be two of the same size, both suckling from mum. So there's the potential for two. It's also a good way to tell is by looking at the amount of teats they have. For example, a lion has 4, an elephant has 2, a hyena has 2. That doesn't mean that they can't have more cubs or pups or calves than the number of nipples, because that's always possible that another egg will come into the system and can be fertilized, but it does mean that only a certain amount can be sustained at a time. So with elephants you can clearly see that she's only got 2, so she can only sustain 2, and that's what we've seen. I don't think there's ever been a record of triplets, but most commonly it's 1. As you can imagine, carrying 2 little elephants in you is quite a task. It's very, very demanding. The way that mammal child development works is that there's a certain point to which the mother's metabolism and body cannot survive while the baby is surviving. And that's because the energetic demand is too high, in which case she gives birth. That's why you'll find that when people have triplets or quadruplets or even twins, they're smaller. Oh, we've got a very angry, tiny little youngster who's just... I'm a bulldozer, Mom, I'm a bulldozer. See the way it's picking its head up like that and makes its trunk fall over and make it look like a nose? Like a large nose. Ah, hello! When adults do that, it looks a lot more menacing. So sweet. So anyway, as I was saying, with the mum elephant that's going to be carrying 2 calves, she probably won't carry them to full term, which is 22 months, and they'll probably be smaller, and the demand on her body will be extreme. That's just generally how it works. So I'm kind of staying on this end because our car, Wendy here, is rather loud today. So I want to not irritate the elephants with the sound of her. So we're going to just stay put for... I mean, I could move forward, actually, because they've moved further down. Shall we try that? Let's try that. Hello, Earwald! How are you? Let's just watch them, because you didn't like the sound. So you'd like to know, why do elephants cover their bodies in mud? They like to do that because they need some relief from any sort of pests that manage to get between their skin. Because their skin's all cracked. You notice that, Earwald? So to get to those little bits there, they've got to get mud in. And then what they'll do is they'll cake their body up with some mud, and then afterwards rub themselves on a tree. So it's almost like they're waxing their skin. Think about it like that, and it gets to pull off any pests. Just gonna pop back onto the road so we can look a little bit more clearly. Can you hear how impressive Wendy is sounding today? Okay, we can kind of get a view through here. She is ready to race. She definitely sounds like it. There they are. So continue with Earwald's question. It kind of fits nicely in the way that they spend their time, and that they all love to go have a swim, and that's to cool down because they have this huge body, so they have a lot less surface than they do volume. which means that they heat up very slowly and they cool down very slowly. So they need to get a dunk in the water and have a pool party to cool down. And that's why there are many adaptations that it's got in order to cool down, like the large ears to dissipate heat, large arteries and veins behind the ears as well. And they can pump all of the blood that's in their body through those ears in 20 minutes. So that means that in 20 minutes all their blood can become a little bit cooler as it starts to move through the ears. Then apart from that, they've got the crackly skin, which is an attempt to actually increase surface area as well, and also to trap water. Thank you, Davi. And here's another pastime of the day. There is a lot of excrement being deposited. Imagine they're eating 300 kgs worth of food a day, and then you've got to get rid of it somehow, and that's how. So there's that, and then there's the dust bathing that happens after the cooling down and the dam playing in the water, and then it gets caked up nice and muddy, and then they rub themselves on a nice marula and they peel it off. Apart from that, if it's really, really hot, then they can use the mud as a bit of a sunscreen as well. A good use of the day, I think. Sean, you'd like to know how many kilos of food an elephant eats in a day? Let me switch on before I answer, otherwise you won't be able to hear me. They eat about 300 kgs. That is a lot. We can grab a quick second glance here. It's still very dense. I'm going to try and get a little bit ahead. I see some water bucks as well. Let's see if we can just hop on here. 300 kgs is usually for a large bull. I would say for an average cow. Can we get a view through there, Darby? Cool. For average cow, I think a little bit less. Hello, sweetheart. So obviously they continuously eat throughout the day, as they would need to sustain their large tonnage. See how still she's keeping there? They usually do that when they're listening. Various things, they'll still stand very still. They'll put their trunk onto the ground to pick up any vibrations that are going on through the ground. You might also see them pick up one leg and start to swing it. You might see them stretch one leg out like they're stretching out their calf and putting their heel on the ground. Is that little one trying to suckle? I think so. No. Maybe you tried, but were not successful. This is the one that's been full of energy. The thrashing you heard while we were looking at the large cow was this little one grabbing a dried branch and just swinging uncontrollably. Absolute Polo, you'd like to know if there's any big tuskers left in the park? Well, the elephants are free to roam, as you would know. There are not any fences between the parks, so the likelihood of another elephant that is a big tusker coming in is large. But I can only say I've seen one, and that was in Torchwood maybe a year and a half ago. That I've seen one that I thought, wow, you are a proper tusker. And you also asked about conservation efforts and whether we think with conservation efforts we can change that and there'll be more big tuskers around. I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. That is because the genes for those massive tusks are very few and far between in the populations. So during the time when ivory trade was rife, That would have been the time when the animals that had the largest tusks were the ones that were poached, or not poached at that time, just killed because it was allowed. And so those genes were now excluded from the population. So now the genes that are most likely to help you survive, because there's still poaching that happens, and poaching will happen to the largest, biggest, most valuable members, and that goes for lions as well, which is why you'll start to get lions that are smaller manes, etc. Anyway, with the elephants, those genes for those large tusks are now a threat to that population. So they will start to, and they already have, moved out of the population, and tusklessness and smaller tusks will be more crucial for the survival of elephants. So regardless of the conservation efforts, unless real tusker bulls are bred constantly into the population, it's very unlikely that they will suddenly bounce back, unless there's a mutation that happens, or some sort of reverting back to other genetics, which is possible, but it's unlikely given that smaller tusks is going to increase their survival. That's what I think, at least. Okay, they've moved away. We can safely start Wendy without inciting anybody into a drag race. There we go. Okay. Nikki is still moving around. Not sure what he's doing, but I'm sure it's exciting, whatever it is. So let's go back over to him.
So, hope everyone enjoyed this elephants. We are back at andBeyond in Ngala. And the last tracks we had of these lions were crossing out of the riverbed, and they were heading up into, or my right, in the easterly direction. Now, one of the other ranges, which is a little bit north of us, has said he's found more lion tracks there. So I don't know, maybe if there's 2 prides of lions on the reserve at the moment, or if it's just the 1 pride of lions. So there's actually a road I want to take, so we can go and have a closer look. We're still hot on the tracks for these lions. And who knows, maybe we'll be, I don't want to say it, but don't want to jinx myself. Let's see if we can find any fresher tracks. But just to give everyone an idea, we have moved quite far. I think these lions would have moved probably close to at least 10 kilometers during the evening. And the last tracks, we're heading down this way from the pride that we are following this morning, the one with the white lions. But then also another ranger up on this side, on our northerly side, he has said that he's found also tracks of a pride. So it'd be interesting to know maybe if there could be 2 prides of lions on the reserve at the moment. So let's carry on with our search. Now, if there would be 2 prides of lions, I'm thinking that normally up in this area here, there's a territory of also quite a fairly big pride. And with this particular pride, there's quite a few younger individuals. So if that Birmingham pride, the one with the white lions, with all those big adults with them, if they move into this area, they'll most likely push that other pride away. So let's see if we can find more tracks. And this is the thing, like, remember we said when we track, it's like building a puzzle. So we're slowly starting to piece everything together and get an understanding of what these lions were up to, especially during the evening. And with them moving this far, also tells me that they are possibly looking for opportunity to hunt. Because if they made a kill, they wouldn't have needed to walk far at all. Maybe towards the water, but the direction we're going in, the nearest water would probably be more in that direction instead of where we're going now. So with the pride that we often see here, they refer to this pride as the scorer pride. Now, sometimes the pride does break up, so you might find 10, maybe 12 members of the pride. Sometimes it could be a little bit more, a little bit less. There's some Wildebeest and Impala here. Just wanted to go, there's another road that goes up this way. Just want to cut past and maybe see if we can push down this way to see if there's more tracks or signs of these lions. But just to get back with those lions, so normally the pride could be anywhere from 10 to 15 lions. It all depends on which individuals have joined up with the pride. Now, the last time I saw this Ngala Pride that we were talking about, it was down on this road. So it was not too far away from here. There's actually a waterhole just north of where the river is. And we saw them coming or walking up this road in that direction. So that's why I wanted to quickly have a look on this road to see if there's maybe any other signs of the lions crossing on here, or maybe even from this side coming in towards our left. All right, while we still searching, we'll listen to what the other rangers are saying if there's any fresher tracks or signs, but we are going to pick up the pace and hopefully we can find these lions. But let's go back to James and then I'll see everyone soon.
Yes, hopefully we too will find something worth looking at other than the bonnet of the Mahindra. We shall do our best, but it is one of those days when the weather is foul and the wind is blowing. The animals have all taken cover. Oh, except for that Kudu. Do you see it? A young Kudu bull that is lurking in the bushes, attempting to stay hidden. He is currently chewing his cud, which of course is a detestable thing that these poor ruminants have to go through on a daily basis. Detestable because basically, and I don't want you to think about this too deeply, but they basically have to vomit up into their mouths, re-chew their food, and then swallow it again, which I am most pleased I do not have to do. So what he's doing, for those of you who are not familiar with rumination, is he's just eaten a whole lot of leaves because he is a browser, not a grazer, and he's filled up the first chamber of his stomach, called the rumen, with partially chewed leaves, and now, because it's full, he must stand and regurgitate it, which is a gentle way of saying vomit, regurgitate it into his mouth, re-chew it thoroughly, and then swallow it, and it'll go through the second, third, and fourth chambers of his stomach. And the process is very efficient. It pulls out all the proteins, and through the bacteria in his stomach, he is able to create all the fatty acids and amino acids that he needs to create the proteins for life in his body. Kalina, yes, there are Ngala bulls around, but Nyalas, much like Kudu, like to live in thick bush, and there is no end to the amount of thick bush they can live in at the moment. I'd like you to ask Nikki when next you see him, which will probably be in about 10 minutes, whether he sees any Ngala at Ngala, because I didn't used to. I think I saw 2 Ngala the whole time I was there, and I could never figure out why, because they certainly were all over the Letaba River, which is about, from there, what should we say, it's about 100 kilometers to the north of that, in a drier area still, and there were Ngala everywhere there, and lots down here in the Sabi Sands. So I don't know why there aren't many at Ngala. No, so he does say they see them, so obviously the numbers have increased in that part of the world. Very elegant Kudu bull there, going off, perhaps finished his second breakfast, or his first breakfast for the second time, and now he'll move on to his second breakfast. Well, Owen, wasn't that spectacular? Ellis, you're wondering if this is my real accent. Yes, this is the way I speak. I'm known to put on 1 or 2 this one that you're currently hearing is the general way of speaking. I'm glad it doesn't offend you too much. Why does it surprise you? Do I sound very different? On we go. It is my very real accent. Sometimes I do put on a little one like this when I am trying to make something out of a sighting that isn't really much of a sighting, but that is my real one. Now we are driving along the southern boundary of Djuma, in the rough vicinity of where Trishala and Owen swear blind they saw a male leopard yesterday. Well, I can find no sign of him, but again, that's hardly surprising given the thickness of the bush. You almost have to have a leopard walk onto the road in front of you in order to see one here. But we're looking at all the treetops and looking at all of the termite mounds. We're going to go to Trishala now, who is just in front of us, heading this way. Something went into that hole, Owen.
I was going to head his way, but instead I'm going to turn in. So we were just on Gari Main, way down east, to just have a look to see if Kuchava was around there. Obviously not. If she was, that would be awesome, because she has a little cubby. It's always worth a shot, at least I always think so. So we're now going to head, I think, back towards I'm sorry, I didn't get what you said, Louise. Did you say I was loud? Oh, Wendy is almost as loud as I am. She's pretty loud. Am I going to have to shout so that you can all hear me? So we're going to head now back towards Buffelshoek Dam and just have another look around there. And then start to head more to the central areas of Djuma. I didn't see any tracks for any leopards on that road either. That's why I like the main roads, is that you can see what's entering and exiting various places. But at that particular point, far east, it wouldn't be entering or exiting Djuma, it would be entering or exiting Chitwa or Torchwood. But maybe there'd be a leopard on the side of the road that we could see. But alas, there is nothing. It's still very windy. Not windy. Windy's loud too, but the wind is fairly loud as well. So a lot of animals tend to kind of want to be away from the wind in the sea. Anyway, Nikki has got some of the animals that we are missing at the moment because of the wind, so let's go over to him.
So we just came across this herd of Impala, as well as zebra, but you'll notice before I get to the Impala, because most of them are male, so it's like a bachelor herd, let's get back to the zebra. So zebras are my favorite animals. Now, the reason being is, hopefully we'll be able to explain this, is if you look at the stripes of the zebra, have you noticed especially that one in the middle? Like if you look at the mane, how the stripes go from the neck into the mane, and that the mane from between the ears, like just to behind the shoulder blades, is exactly the same height. You can see that one as he's feeding, he's pointing his ears backwards, probably just listening out if there was any possible danger. He'll be able to know exactly what's going on around him. Now, just looking at this whole area, so maybe if we just zoom out a little bit to have a look at the Impala and the zebra. you'll notice that most of the impala here all have horns. So these are all males, and the reason why they're together is because of safety and numbers. You can imagine with the zebra and the impala, we have seen some lion tracks around in the area, so they're pretty vulnerable to lions, and that's most likely why they came into an open area and joined up with other species, because they know the more eyes, the more ears, the safer they're going to be. And you'll also notice that even with the impala, some of them, when they're feeding with their heads down, others will be keeping their heads up just to scan around to see if there's anything around. Oh, there's a little baby zebra. So see where this impala is right over here? So just beyond that, there's a little baby in the back. I don't know if anyone noticed, but with that little zebra, there's quite a lot of black around his face. Let's just try and see again if he picks up his head. There we go. So that is actually a form of mange. So often when little ones are under a lot of stress, they might show that over their face, or could even be from what is known as mange. I don't know too much about it. Maybe, I don't know if some of the viewers have seen it before, maybe seen bigger zebras with more of that, where they have this black patch, or maybe the whole face that's black in colorization. I'd like to know from everyone's experience if they've seen this before. I've only seen, I think this is the third little zebra that I've seen with it. I haven't really noticed big adults with that same colorization, more just the youngsters. And often the youngsters wear them. Oh, there's a zebra coming in from the left. Just want to see if something might have spooked it. We might have just come and joined up with the rest. Just came to join up with the rest. But see, let's see if one of those might be the mother of the youngster. You can see quickly picking up the pace. It might be that front one. That's the mother. I'm going to try and move forward so we can see if we can get another glimpse of that little zebra. With mange before. Just want to have another look. Yeah, because it's not a very usual, it's an unusual behavior to see them, occurrence, to see that mange around the face. It's pretty interesting. I'll try and see if I can read up a bit more about it as well. If we do come across it on our other drives, we'll be able to know a bit more about it. Kelly, you've asked an interesting question. How many babies would a zebra normally have? So they only have one, and they'll carry that young baby for 9 months, so same as humans. And the reason being is because you can imagine with zebra and, let's say, wildebeest and impala that are very vulnerable, especially if there's predators around. So when the youngster is born, they need to be able to keep up with the rest of the herd. And so you can even see that young one moving, like the legs almost look as tall as that of mom. It's just the body that's slightly smaller. Now, you can imagine, let's say with predators, the mom can't afford to have the youngsters in her for like 9 months, because then she won't be able to hunt. But zebra, on the other hand, needs to make sure that youngster is able to keep up. So it will be one, but she'll invest quite a lot of time with that youngster in the gestation period, so that when the youngster is born, at least they'll be able to keep up with the rest of the herd. There's actually some more zebra off to our right as well. There's quite a few of them around. I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 zebras in this area. Now, in the direction of where those zebras are moving, there's quite a big water hole. And what I'm thinking is we haven't had any luck with these lions as of yet. Just wanted to make use of the map again, just to show you where we're planning on going now from here. Now, just going back to the map, so we've pretty much explored most of this area this morning, trying to look for those lions, and we unfortunately haven't found any fresher signs of them. There are still guys on tracks of these lines trying to find them, so we'll be listening out to that. But right over here, just want to quickly familiarize myself. So right over on this side here, there will be another waterhole, and that's the direction those zebras are going in. Now, the other tracks of the lines that were crossing over this road from that other ranges, it was heading more or less in that direction. So let's get across there, have a look, and then we can just take it from there. But how beautiful was this? I mean, seeing all these zebras together with the Impala, it's pretty special. As you can see with the weather, it's pretty dark and grey, so it is a cold day. So that's why with the zebra and the Impala, they'll probably eventually move into an area that's a little bit more concealed out of the wind. But for now, let's carry on. Nell, you were asking quite a good question about mange associated with drought. So if I look at the size of that zebra, I would probably say it's close to maybe 6.5, 7 months old, if not older. And the rain we had this year was late January, early February. So maybe that mange could have been from the earlier years when it was a little bit dry and we didn't have all the rain. Because prior to this, so just to give you an idea, you'll see the area we're driving in now. The grass is pretty tall. It looks lush and green. But prior to this whole area almost looked like the road. There was barely any grass in this section. But I do agree. I think Zaria, I'm glad that I'm not the only one that loves zebra as much as you do. They are my favorite. Look at this one right here. So if you look at this one, or the two closest to us, the ones that are picking up their tail now, just quickly going to the toilet, you'll find that their bellies are quite big. See, big and rounded, so most likely pregnant. And who knows, but as we go on with the show over the next little while, we might even find one of them giving birth and seeing another little one around. But definitely my favorite. Even look at if you look at the faces, especially the one, if you look at the one, let's say that's now moving to the right. So you see those two off to the right. Have you noticed how the stripes are all different on both of them? And even in between the broader black stripes, there's this faint line like a shadow stripe running in between. See, while they're having their heads down, the others are keeping their heads up, making sure that all of them are safe. And by doing so, they look after one another. Now, another thing, and I think you might love this because this is one of the things why I love a zebra, is just before I carry on, just notice this one doesn't have a tail, or like half of the tail has been bitten off. Now, it would be interesting to see once they turn away, we might be able to see if it's a male or female. I'll show you how to do that, but it could have been either from, if two males often fight with each other, they bite each other's tails, so they have to fold in their tails to be very careful. But otherwise, it could also have been from a predator, probably trying to grab that hold of that zebra's tail. It's very interesting to see. But what I wanted to say, so the other thing why I love a zebra is because of their name. Now, have you noticed when they move and they cross each other, it looks like a dazzle. So sometimes they refer to them not just as a herd of zebra, but as a dazzle of zebra. Marco, you had quite an interesting question about why the mane will stand up. Now, to be completely honest, I'm not too sure if there's any scientific reason for it, but just from my understanding, I mean, even if you look at horses, sometimes the way that the hair goes from the neck in that angle, and also how hard the hair is, it's really hard. It feels like a brush. So I have been fortunate enough to touch the mane of a zebra, and it literally feels like a brush. It's a very hard hair, and I think that also gives to that structure I'm being able to stand up. But it is an interesting. Do you have any ideas of why it could be, or maybe a better explanation about it? It's interesting. It's one of my favorite animals, but I've never thought about it in that way. I've always just admired them, and sometimes I'm a little bit drawn away about how beautiful they are, and especially if you watch them for a little while. For now, they are slowly feeding, and you can see they are joining up with the Impala. They'll probably be in this area for the next little while. So for now, let's carry on with our search and head back to James.
As far as I understand it, zebras' manes stand up because of the fat that there is in the neck of a zebra. It's a bit of a fat store. That doesn't necessarily mean that, or doesn't answer the question as what purpose a mane standing up signifies, and I suspect it has to do with signaling health to members of the opposite sex. But I don't know that for sure. That's what I think. So if you've got a floppy mane, you're obviously in pretty poor condition. And that will probably then have resulted in the evolutionary pressure for the mane to stand up regardless of health, so that you can con a potential mate into thinking that you are healthy. And over the course of evolutionary time, that would have resulted in zebras having manes that stand up straight. That makes sense. It's a little bit like, there's a human trait like that that's really quite interesting. And it is the trait of, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this concept of I don't know what do they call it? The perfect ratio. But it's the ratio of a woman's hips to her waist. The golden ratio. There we go. Thank you for that, Louise. The golden ratio of hips to waist. And I don't know, there's some ideal ratio, I don't know what it is, that men or heterosexual men will find inherently attractive. And it's a classic sort of hourglass shape. And the reason for that is that it's supposed to signify good condition, a thin waist, but wide hips for safe birth, so an ideal mate. Wide hips for good for birth, which will be safe for the child and for the mother, but good condition indicated by a slim waist. Now what's interesting is that obviously not all women are born with wide hips, and throughout human history childbirth has been exceptionally dangerous for human mothers. But in order to attract mates, what women of childbearing age do, obviously completely unconsciously, is lay down deposits of fat around the bottom as opposed to around the midriff. And then when women get a bit older, like the rest of us, we put on fat around the midriff as opposed to on the bottom. And it's one of the ways that evolution has conspired to con men, or con potential mates, which I think is quite interesting. In fact, I think it's absolutely fascinating. So that's why young women tend to put on weight around the bottom, as opposed to around the midriff. And then as you get a little bit older, once you've had kids, and once you approach menopause, you'll start to put it on around the belly region, like men do. Now, men don't do the same. Men have other ways of conning women, but fat deposition isn't one of them. Isn't that interesting? Well, Geordie, that's quite a difficult one. We generally leave things up to nature to look after out here. So if we find an injured impala or an injured kudu, we normally let nature look after itself. Unless that injury has been caused by a human being. And if it has been caused by a human being, then what we'll do is we'll get a vet in to have a look. Now, it's often very difficult to do that. Ooh, there's been a buffalo around here. Today. It's often quite difficult because it's really hard to watch an animal suffer, isn't it? And so while we desperately want to call the vet in sometimes, it's often not practical. And the other reason that we don't is that so often we see an injured animal, and a good example was the previous matriarch of the Djuma clan, whose name is Corky. She's still around. And she got into a big fight with the rest of the hyenas and was, we thought, going to die. She had two really badly damaged legs. We couldn't tell if they were broken or sprained or what the situation was, but she could hardly walk. And we thought to ourselves, she's definitely going to die. And a number of people said, you've got to get the vet in to help her. And we had the same discussion that we're having now about how, unless it's a human-induced injury, we wouldn't do that. And Corky recovered, because the animals out here are tremendously resilient. It is amazing what they're able to recover from. And so often by bringing in a medical intervention, we could actually be doing more harm than we are good. Anyway, that's just one of the things that happens in this particular area. I know up in Kenya, in the Masai Mara, they will often have a vet in to look after a sick animal. I'm not sure that one approach is better than the other approach. You know, the old or the classic example that I like to give here, when people say, well, we don't want to interfere and so we don't bring a vet in. And that's not a very good argument, because we provide water for the animals here. And so we are intervening often. We clear the bush sometimes. We often set fires. So we intervene in nature really quite often. It's just not often that we do it medically with animals. So I'm not sure which approach is best and which approach is better for conservation, but that's the approach that they take over here. Non-interference medically with animals most of the time, and in other places it's a bit different. But I will tell you, it's extremely hard to watch an animal suffer, especially if it's an animal that you know quite well, like Corky. We'd watched Corky at a den for many, many months, and we'd watched her raise cubs, and it was very difficult to watch her in such distress and such pain. But she survived. With a watty at Wiffleshoek Dam? Trishala is now at the dam on the northeastern corner of Djuma, and she's got something there, but I couldn't hear what it was.
Well, thank goodness it's come back. And it is a hippo. Whoop, and we're down again. There's two of them hanging out under that tree. So we've decided to just stop off here and give you a nice look at the dam before we continue heading towards Drakensberg and then a bit of Mamba down back to Twin Dams. It's always a little bit more comfortable when we're the only vehicles out, but it can be a little bit more difficult because we can only cover a certain amount of ground. And with animals moving and you moving, you could miss them just by a couple seconds. So we thought, let's do the Drakensberg sort of area. And then I also want to maybe go via tele-access and then up to Aubrey's again. see if Tlalamba is anywhere to be seen. She exited out through Aubrey's, from what I understand, crossed out north. So maybe she's quite a walker, so maybe she'll come back around that area. We can be hopeful. Hello, little grebe. Just bobbing along. Do you know you just swam over some hippos? Shelby, you'd like to see what animal, or you'd like to know what animals we see that are most active in the morning. Active, I think animals that are moving are generally predators in the morning, in the wee hours of the morning where it's still a little bit dark. But once the light starts coming up, birds are really, really active. They all start singing. They're all making use of that cool air that carries sound waves a longer distance. So they're advertising themselves. We see that quite a bit. You do see impalas and other antelope around as well, but they're not very active. They're kind of sitting down or lying down and chewing away. But you don't actually see them walking about too much. And then also around that time of day, you can see quite a few snakes in the trees. We've seen those, chameleons. And that's because they're easier to spot at that time. We don't see too many of the nocturnal creatures like we'd like to, especially now that we've moved the time, so we don't have that bout of darkness when we start. But there used to be a time when we'd see white-tailed mongoose out quite a bit. On quarantine, there was a period where we went through just seeing them as a very short period, like a 2-week period, where we saw them quite a bit on quarantine. Oh, it almost looked like they were about to kiss. Very, very nice. So strangely, I read a weird paper, well, it's not a weird paper, it was just an odd one, that said that hippos will submerge for 30 minutes. I can tell you that I'm quite sure, 100%, that they cannot do that. It's more 3 to 5 minutes. That is more reasonable. Anyway, that thing was written in the 60s. So Nikki is also looking at something similar, actually exactly the same, that I was looking at. And so let's go back over to him while I keep on going.
So we just saw, I think there were 3 or 4 hippos near that one dead branch. I just want to have a look and see if they come back up again. Saw the back of one. Oh, there we go. There's one that popped up his head. Another one. What I've often noticed with hippos, particularly on days like this where it's a bit overcast, they tend to spend most of the day just in the water. Like on a nice sunny day, they might come out, lay on the bank in the middle of the day, just to sunbathe and then move back into the water. But for now, they're just in the water at the moment. And you'll see whenever they go down, they can stay down for quite a while before they have to like come back up and breathe again and go down. But it's just a beautiful water. We came down here to have a look and see if there's any signs of these lions. There hasn't been any tracks yet, but it is a beautiful place just to sit down and listen out to hear if we can hear anything in the distance. So just off to the right, there's some... So just off to the right, there's a... Djuma asked a very interesting question earlier about how long can a hippo's teeth grow. But I just want to quickly focus on these little birds there. I don't know if you've noticed, some of them have like a very bright white face and then like this rufous color on the chest and a bit of gray on the wings. It's white-faced whistling ducks. And they have this very particular whistle sound, like a that you can often hear, especially near the waterhole. So you can, sometimes if you're driving in the bush and you can see them flying over and going to land, you know there's some water somewhere. Djuma, but to answer that question, it's a very, very good question. Like, I've seen a hippo skull before, just to give you an idea. Maybe if I can grab the camera on me, just to point out more or less. So in one of the riverbeds not too far away from here, we had a hippo that eventually passed of an old age, and I went down to have a look at the jaw of this hippo, and I kid you not, the teeth were probably like that size that I saw, and they were sharp, like towards the edge, because as they grow they start rubbing up against one another like that. So this edge here was extremely sharp. It's almost like a knife that you could cut with, but probably like around that size that I've seen. It's so beautiful, like just with all the noises that you can hear here. There's a lot of water birds. There's some waterbuck and impala in the far distance. There's some cattle egrets. You'll see that little white bird amongst all the white-faced whistling ducks. And also some little grebes, like off to the right from where the hippo was. Oh, let's just see, because often with little grebes, they go under the water and they come back up again. Oh, there we go. There's the grebe. It's called the little grebe. Oh, down again. So in Afrikaans, they have a very interesting name. They call it dobbertjie. Now, dobbertjie is almost like a cork. Like if you put it under the water, it pops back up again. Just wait for it. And I wondered, like with him now, is he probably looking out for some tadpoles, maybe some small fish? Margo, so this waterhole where we are at the moment is called, we refer to it as the rangers as Clara Dam. Now, the reason why it's called Clara, so the Ngala was donated by a guy called Hans Hohausen, and his mother and father was Albert and Clara, and this waterhole was named as in memory of her. So we're going to just sit here for a little while longer, just to hear if we can hear any other signs or hear anything from the rangers with regard to those lions. But for now, let's head across to James, who's currently looking at a wildebeest.
Yes, we've got a gnu here, a bull gnu. Too late. It was too far above us. Sorry, I went silent because there was a lilac-breasted roller doing its rolling display above our heads, but Owen wouldn't have managed to get the camera up there and onto it. You've got the bird now. For those of you who don't know, they're called rollers because of a display that they do, and that one just did it, just at an angle that we couldn't get the camera to. As you can see, the weather has not improved at all since we came out some 2 and a bit hours ago, and we're observing the peaceful scene here of a gnu bull with a couple of impala rams. And this is a situation that plays out quite frequently, where gnu bulls who live on their own hook up with a couple of impala, sometimes bachelors, sometimes a nursery herd, and just use their eyes and ears to keep safe, basically. A gnu is an ideal size for a lion in this part of the world. And so I don't think the impala mind too much. A couple of extra eyes and ears, slightly taller than they are, very useful in trying to stay alive in a predator-infested wilderness. Although it hasn't seemed very predator-infested today, it must be said. Kim, these are the sorts of jokes that will get you ridiculed online. You say, I GNU that the lilac-breasted roller was out of sight, or that we wouldn't see it. I GNU it. Uh-huh. Thank you, Kim, for that very hilarious joke. Louise says, I mustn't laugh too hard, I might crack a rib. All right, we're going to move on from here, and we're going to head back towards the den of Ribbon and the Djuma clan, and see if perhaps her little bebes have decided to make an emergence. And we're going to go down towards the treehouse waterhole for the last time. On this drive, anyway. This is the only road in this area that I haven't driven today, and so perhaps and perchance it is a road that contains the leopard. All right, good. Nikki has managed to get a better view of a lilac-breasted roller up at Clara Dam.
So just as we drove past that waterhole on like this one particular road, we just came across this lilac-breasted roller, and he's not too far away from us. But I just wanted to use the opportunity just to like point out some of the beautiful colors. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see like around the face all that white, especially near the eyes and above the beak, under the beak, and then you get this quite a beautiful purplish color. Just under that white, and then like a powder blue color, and then you also notice with the tail he has those two long feathers at the end of the tail. And remember like the southern ground hornbill we saw this morning in the lilac-breasted roller, so they're part of our starbird. So at Ngala, andBeyond Ngala, we often have this thing where whenever guests come, we have this challenge of saying, can we see 10 of the special birds in the area. Now, there are 315 bird species that have been recorded in Ngala, but this is one of the special ones that really stands out. In bright light, you might even be able to count. We've counted the one day. I think we counted 13 different colors on this beautiful bird. But I think with the wind being so strong today, he might have just hunkered down in that branch, might be even tired from flying all the way to get here, and he's just enjoying the view from there. So you can imagine also like using that as a vantage point. So as soon as there's an insect that lands in the road, or maybe a butterfly that lands on a tree nearby, he'll be able to spot it and then possibly get his next meal, his breakfast. While he's looking at us, I just wanted to show you the different starbirds that we have. So, Kelly, you had a very interesting question about the calls of birds within a species, and I'll get back to that right now. I just wanted to show you, we've been talking about the starbirds. Now, this was the southern ground hornbill that we saw this morning, and this is the lilac-breasted roller that we're seeing right over here. And I think the other day, for some of the viewers that were driving with Rowan, you saw the Varro's eagle owl. But these are just some of the beautiful birds that we find. Now, to get back to that question about do some birds call differently within a species? Now, some of the robins could. You might find them mimicking other birds. But in general, they'll have the same call. Like, I mean, the southern ground hornbill sounds like drums in the distance, like a And they don't really, within that species, there might be some of the youngsters will have a different call to the adult, but it's more or less, it sounds the same. So you won't say like, you won't necessarily be confuse it with another species, if you know the bird call very well, of course. But yeah, these are just some of the beautiful birds I want to show. The other one we could be listening out for, you don't normally see them in the open, is this one called the Sterling's Wren Warbler. That sounds like a cell phone ringing, like a tring tring in the distance. And a big martial eagle. I mean, this eagle has a wingspan, probably if you would have measured from this side of the vehicle to that side, it would have covered the whole vehicle. So anyway, those are some of the starbirds that we could also be looking at as we are carrying on with our drive. Right, let's go back to Trishala. She's just found a big elephant.
We have found a big elephant. It's a nice big bull. And he was scratching himself on a nearby very tall tree, which we are hoping maybe he could show us his strength by pushing it over, but that is a tall, tall tree. He seemed, that's the one. He was shaking it to its core, I think. Well, in fact, he was actually just scratching his rear end on it, but that was sufficient to shake it to its core. Hello, big boy. He's got some nice tusks on him. We were talking about tuskers earlier. Hello, Relik. You'd like to know why it is that elephants push trees over. Well, they don't intentionally go to push over a tree. What usually happens is they tend to scratch themselves on trees. They tend to strip trees. So you know there's an outer bark, the bark that looks brown around trees. Elephants like to pull that bark off and eat the tasty orange parts inside. We call that the tree cambium. By doing that, sometimes by mistake, because they're so heavy, they can push it over. Also, sometimes they rub their tusks on it, or, like I said, they scratch it, and just a little bit too much weight on a tree, and all of a sudden it's pushed over. But they don't intentionally go around angrily dropping trees as they walk. Unfortunately, it's just a result of their big size, but it's actually not a bad thing, because it means that they create little places for other animals to go and live in, like maybe a little mongoose needs a home, and a pushed over tree or fallen over tree can provide them some safety, so it's not a bad thing. And they don't do it to every tree that you see, because like you can see, there's lots of trees around. So the odd tree that they push over is actually very valuable. He looks a little bit sleepy. Michaela, you'd like to know how old I think he is. It's a little bit difficult to tell without seeing his body size. But his tusks are quite long. Also, males continue to grow for quite a while. So there's a couple things we're going to look at. Let's look at it together. Firstly, it's a profile view, so that's going to be difficult because the wider the distance between their eyes and the distance between their trunks, so you get a nice hourglass shape, the older they tend to be, and we can't see that right now. But we can see that the tusks look quite good. They're not very, very long, nor are they very thick. You can see that there's indents on his forehead where it's pushed in. There's a big stick, my boy. And I'm also looking for maybe some sagginess around the mouth. but I can't see just how tall he is. So I'm going to put him in about the 30s. I would say early 30s. He doesn't look very, very old. So just as a guide, when an elephant is about a year old, it can pass under the mum. About 3 years old, they get their tusks poking out. Before that, they have something called tushes, which are just little tusks that are kind of inside of their spot. Ooh, James is a very interesting bird. We'll be back to this later.
This is very cool, everyone. It's an immature Diederik's cuckoo. Now, we hear them all the time. And those of you living in the cities of South Africa will hear them quite often too. Going, common sound of the summer. They've stopped calling now. And this youngster is just about to embark on his first migration. And although they look pretty obvious, when you see a photograph of them, you can see how difficult they are to see in the bush. And not only that, you can see how beautifully camouflaged they are. Is he still there? Yes, he is still there. I can only see him with my binoculars. Now, what I'm going to do is just quickly check where he flies to. Let me just check. So they're an intra-African migrant, and which that probably means that they'll fly to somewhere just south of the Sahara in the next few months. And as I mentioned to our regular viewers quite often, well, I hope you'll all become regular viewers soon, it astounds me that this cuckoo knows where to migrate. It never meets its parents. And its host, which are mostly weavers in this area, obviously have no idea how to convey the information of where the cuckoo should fly when its first winter arrives. And yet somehow, programmed into this bird's DNA is the knowledge for where to migrate. Absolutely mind-blowing. And sitting right next to a fork-tailed drongo, who is not normally the most tolerant of birds. It doesn't seem to mind the presence of the junior cuckoo, which was probably raised in a weaver's nest somewhere not too far from here. This is a magical sighting of this bird, it really is. We don't often get long views of them. And when they're adults, that green color that you can see on his back extends most of the way around the bird, but for the front, and it's really iridescent. Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, Cruiser, the bruiser, it is overwhelming. Or how it is amazing how these animals have such overwhelming instincts. We have a few of them ourselves. Yeah, he's a bit puffed up, isn't he? He's also quite fat, I think. The weavers have raised him well. So just to reiterate, this bird has two parents, obviously. And the mother would have laid her eggs in the nest of a weaver, while the weaver was out or distracted perhaps by this bird's father. And the cuckoo mother would either have turfed out the weaver's eggs, quite possibly that's what she would have done when she laid her own, or when this little chap was born, he may have turfed out the weaver's eggs, or perhaps even killed the offspring of the weaver. I'm not sure how it works with these chaps specifically. But either way, the weaver would have raised, or the pair of weavers would have raised this cuckoo as their own. And so he has never met his parents, unless it's been in passing, and he wouldn't have known his parents. And yet somehow he knows how to be a cuckoo. He will know, or she will know, to lay her eggs in a weaver's nest when the time comes. And it really is just utterly remarkable to me that none of that behavior is learned. Someone called Jachers Diersvaar, which is a very interesting name, who want to know if it flies in a flock when it migrates. I think you'll probably find that they fly alone. But I don't actually know. It also says they occasionally overwinter here. So a youngster like this might spend its first winter here. But it's unlikely. Well, I'll tell you why it's possibly not that unlikely. The app I'm looking at says that they mostly depart in late February, and we're now well into April, and so perhaps this chap is going to hang around. That's stunning. Good. All right, we'll move on to Ribbon's Den, which is not far from here, and we'll send you back up to andBeyond Ngala, where Nikki is looking at a giraffe.
So we just found this big bull giraffe, and if you look near the head, it looks like this giraffe is feeding, but it's not really eating off anything. And what it's doing now is, earlier on, I think you with James saw a wildebeest ruminating. So this giraffe is actually ruminating. So you can imagine he's probably walked the whole morning, picked off a few leaves, and now he's bringing up everything again, chewing it and swallowing it just to break it down. I also just want to take the time to look around his head. Now, hopefully he'll turn towards us, but you'll notice just in front of his eyes, like on the front of his head, as well as the back of his head, there's quite a few scars. So it tells us that he's, and also judging by his overall size, he's a pretty big male, and as well as an old male. Even the very top of his horns are well worn out. So he might have been through quite a few fights in his life. Now you can imagine with giraffes, whenever the males fight with each other and they hit each other with their heads, the amount of damage that they can cause to one another. He's deciding to move on. I think for now, let's leave him be. Like, just to give everyone an idea, an update on those lion tracks from this morning. So I spoke to some of the rangers and I asked, so is there any fresher tracks or signs? Because the last tracks we saw was near that waterhole. And they said, unfortunately, the tracks that they were following, they lost the tracks because there was a troop of baboons that moved over them. So it completely obliterated tracks, so they can't see if it went to the left or to the right. So now they're going to start on foot and do these wide circles around to see if they can maybe see some more lion tracks. If we don't find them this afternoon, I'm sure they're working hard, and who knows, maybe later on we could be lucky with them. But for now, we're still going to carry on. There's always a chance there could be other lions in the area as well as we do our drive. Jack, you had a very interesting question of why do they have the horns on the top of the head? I'm sure it will be for quite a variety of different reasons. I mean, with the males, often when they fight, they can use that in order to try and hook the other giraffes like leg and like throw it onto the ground. But also sometimes you might find that they could push it up into a branch and break down the branch so it hangs down lower so they can actually feed off of it. I don't know, have you read up a lot about it? Do you have an interesting thing that you can maybe let us know? I would love to hear. Heath, in regards to how long a giraffe's tongue, that's a very good question. The last time I read up about it was 30 centimeters, and it's really hard to see because sometimes it looks like it might be a bit longer, sometimes a bit shorter, but the reason why they have those long tongues is I don't know if you've ever seen how they strip plants. I'd just like to show you by using an example. So you can imagine with giraffes, if they have quite a long tongue, and let's say they wanted to grab the leaves of this tree. So what they'll do is they'll just wrap that tongue around the branch like this, and then they pull like that, and then they'll be able to get all those leaves that they're wanting to get. Now, I've seen before where a giraffe could not get to a branch. The branch was slightly too high, and it probably stretched the tongue that far, like wrapped it around the branch, pulled it into its mouth, and then broke it. And then the branch was hanging down, and it can actually pick around. But normally around about that length you're looking at. No, I need to do it with the thorn tree. Marcel said he'll do it for me. He said, like, other than the cameraman, he's pretty specialized in giraffe behavior. Alright, so while we are searching for a thorn tree so that Marcel can demonstrate this behavior of a giraffe, we're going to send you back to James, who's currently at the Hyena den.
Yes, I'm really not sure about putting Marcel on camera demonstrating how giraffe eat. I fear that would result in a drastic reduction of viewership. We are sitting at the den, obviously. There is great peace here. Ribbon has opened her eyes once to look at us, and now again. But her cubs have yet to make an appearance. I think it must be very warm where she's lying. She's got a pillow for her head. Her whole body is out of the wind. Her babies are probably keeping part of her warm. She can hear anything. She just needs to lift her head to look around. She's well hidden. Oh, she looks very cozy. Good place to be. Well, if you're a hyena. I imagine the stink in there is quite offensive if you're a human being who is not used to the smell. It has often made me wonder how animals with such sensitive noses are able to tolerate their own smells. A hyena, well, a rat, for example, has got about, what is it? Its brain, about, I think it's 60% is dedicated to interpreting smells. And a hyena can't be that far off that. It's probably slightly less. But and what it translates to is a sense of smell that I believe is roughly 40 to 45 times more sensitive than ours. Now, with that kind of nose, to be living as they do in these dens and around their fellows in the clan, all of whom smell like something cruel, I just imagine it must be fairly difficult for them. The lions are another good example. They don't smell too bad, but they are perfectly happy to relieve themselves in both ways around where they lie and then just sleep all day. And there is nothing in the world that smells worse than lion dung. And yet those animals with their very sensitive noses are very happy to lie around nearby to it. It's quite astounding. I don't know, Orlora Moore. I don't think so. Maybe. You want to know if a hyena stimulates defecation in her youngsters by grooming them? I don't know. I'm not sure I've seen that. Trishala and I have pretty much swapped roles from yesterday. I am with the hyena doing nothing, and she is with more elephants.
Elephants all over the place, and I can't say that I am complaining because I'm having the time of my life getting to watch them. Hello, big girl. They are all around. It's just wonderful. And there's a little one in the back there. And this girl is very nice and relaxed. She's actually coming a little closer, which is wonderful. I always like when we get to park kind of away and they come towards us. That's when you know that they're really comfortable and they're just curious about you. Hi Sanika, you'd like to know what warning signs do elephants give when they're not happy? There's a couple things to watch for. Firstly, they actually look at you and their eyes get quite wide when they look at you. Secondly, they'll stop. You'll see they're out of the corner of their eye looking at you, and then they'll give you a head shake. Those are all just general warning signs that maybe you were too loud coming in, or you drove in too fast, or you didn't realize they're closer to the road than you expected. So it's not really saying, oh, they're going to charge you. And then when they're really scared or something's really upset them, you can see that their tail gets very straight. And a straight tail indicates that something else is going on. That they're, as you can see with hers is down, flat. When I mean straight, I mean it'll be horizontal. Then she may start to take her trunk and fidget with it. Maybe touch her ear, touch her trunk, touch her tusk. She can even put the trunk down on the ground or tuck it underneath her. And she'll start to move towards you. Again, shaking the head as she goes and picking her head up to make herself appear very large and spread her ears out as well. It's at that point that you should make the decision to calm her down, start talking to her. Of course, if you see that this is not going well, you need to get out quickly. Which is why generally with elephant sightings, we prefer to have the road clear in front of us, but that's not always the case. It can't always be that way. But that is the best way to protect yourself, because elephants will often displace their aggression, that they'll be angry with something else, and then you are in the way, and sorry, David, to pull you away from that very tiny one, but we have a massive bull in front of us. Look at that size difference from that little thing we just looked at and this guy here. You should be on the bottle of amarullas. Yes, you should. You are amazing. Now remember we talked about that hourglass shape that happens when the tusks move further aside and the eyes do. You see he's streaming from his temporal glands. Slightly musty. Oh, he's even dribbling. Oh, you are very musty. Hello, boy. I feel you might give me some trouble. I hope not. Let's just watch here. See that? That's another display. Putting the trunk over the tusk. And now we're going to watch if he decides to eat. Oh, he's smelly. So what they can do is they can put food into their mouths and not actually eat, and that's to kind of trick you. So he starts to eat and all good. One thing is for sure. Ooh, you are smelling. Now this looks like an old boy. I'd say he's in his 40s or so. Late 30s, early 40s. Hello everyone. The other problem you may have here is if there's a musk bull, which he very much is, in a herd, it can not be very pleasant for the herd. So they could, remember we were talking about that displacement aggression, they could decide that they don't like his presence, and instead of being upset with him, they can become upset with me. I think everyone's fairly good. He's eating. Occasionally things fall out of his mouth, but it is like that much does drop out of their mouth. He is massive. He is massive. You can see the cow next to him. And she would be in about her 30s. And there is a huge difference. Carla, you'd like to know if he's allowed to join the herd. He doesn't join the herd. What he does is, during the time, hello boy, I see you. During the time that he is musty, like this, which basically means he's ready to mate, he will pursue a herd, and elephants are not aggressive creatures, especially not to each other. Darby has a visitor behind him. Cool. I'm just going to keep an eye behind you, Darby. Elephant seems fine. So he won't join the herd per se. What he will do is follow them around and will try to mate with them. He, as long as not causing too much trouble, he'll be tolerated. Hey boy, I know you see me, I see you. And then once he's done pursuing some mating rights, then he'll leave and continue on. So elephant males, bulls, they are either solitary or they live in small groups of bulls. Usually a couple old ones and a few young ones are learning the ropes from them. He's actually a very nice bull. Occasionally he does just let us know who's large and who's in charge. But he's also very calm and peaceful. He is. He's being quite a gentleman. Gosh, he's massive. You are so large, my boy. I love when they grab things with the two protrusions from their trunk and wave them about to clean them. Hi, boy. I know. But we are just here to look at how big and beautiful you are. Heidi, you say you'd love to be sitting next to me right now. Heidi, that's something you must hold on to, because if you get the opportunity to have this kind of experience, it is unforgettable. It really is. I absolutely love elephants. There's nothing quite like being in their presence and watching them, because they're so aware of you. Just listen, he's so close you can hear him pull. see that his ears have a number of holes in them. That happens with age as they get worn. The ears are very, very thin. And that's of course to help with heat dissipation. You're such a good boy. Such a gentleman. You don't even smell that bad. I'm going to enjoy this boy for a little longer. Not that I can do much else. No, can I? I'm just going to have to deal with you. So let me send you over to Nikki and andBeyond's Ngala for his last segment with us for the morning.
So we've moved on a little bit further away from those water holes, and we started moving to these open grasslands. Now, often when you drive in areas where it's nice and open, other than seeing possibly buffalo or herds of elephants, we're also trying to see if there's maybe signs of cheetah in the area. Now, I haven't seen a cheetah probably for the last 3 or 4 weeks, but often when they do move onto Ngala, we often see them in these open patches, because you can imagine with them, they do need to make use of their speed, so they'll rather go to an open area, maybe find a termite mount, go onto the termite mount and use it as a vantage point. With the wind blowing this road, I think most of the animals in Japan haven't got open, but who knows, with it warming up, get a look here, explores opens. So carrying on our search, let's go back to James and see if he's seen anything at the Hyena den.
We're going to have one last look at Ribbon. Well, you're going to have one last look at Ribbon now, and then we're going to head home. For the smell and taste of eggs is in my mouth. Bacon and eggs and other delicious things for breakfast. While Ribbon snoozes away the rest of the day, that's what's going to happen to us. Hello, Earvolt. You're wondering which animal has got the strongest jaws? Well, the crocodile probably has the strongest biting force of any other animal. I can never remember the actual biting force. The hyena is obviously right up there. The leopard is very strong. The lion is also very strong. The human being's pretty strong too, but it is the crocodile that wins the prize. I don't know if you've ever been bitten by a horse, Earvolt, but that's also pretty painful. Crocodile has the strongest recorded bite, though. And you can actually measure it. They do measure it by shoving a rubber-ringed, measuring device that measures the pressure exerted by a bite into a crocodile's mouth in captivity, and they'll obviously snap down on it to try and kill whatever it is. Trishala is experiencing what we experienced yesterday, except with a much larger elephant.
We are. It's having quite an experience. He's just lovely. He's so calm and so wonderful. He's been coming closer and closer. He gave his eye a gorgeous scratch with his trunk, and you could actually hear him. I think he's still waking up. Dr. Rob, you were wondering that exact thing. Do they wipe their eyes with their trunk like we do with our fists? Yes, they do. And we just saw it. They also can touch their ears. Oh, look at that. They can scratch their ears. This is just lovely. Look at how neatly he pulls the leaves and they don't all just fall. Pulls them and then grabs them with those two protrusions at the end of the trunk. Grab and in without hardly any mess. There we go, we need a big bite now. The two spaces in the trunk just looked at me. Oh. He is massive compared to the other members in this herd. The rest are all females, apart from the calves, which I can't tell at the moment. Hi Manka, you'd like to know how strong is an elephant's trunk? An elephant's trunk is very, very, very strong. They can rip the bark off trees. They can carry little calves with them. That's at least 100 kgs that they can pull little calves with that trunk. And it's got about 50,000 to 150,000 muscles in it. Oh, there was some rumbling going on. So it's very, very strong manka. As you can see, it can break branches with ease. Large branches, trunks. Now here we get a little bit of that behavior. Oh, you've got lovely eyelashes, you gorgeous girl. You're not getting enough attention, so you want to walk in. That's okay. So beautiful. This herd is so relaxed and I just love it. Just stunning. There's not much you can say when you have a sighting like this, is there? It's just an experience. I'm so glad that I can share it with you, and that hopefully you can feel just how grand it is, because it really, really is something special. It's a great way to end our sunrise safari, and we really do hope that you've had a great time, and we thank you for your questions, your comments, and for watching as always. So we're going to head back to camp for some breakfast, and we'll see you later. So bye for now.